Teddy Talks.
Hello and welcome to Teddy Talks After Hours, where we pause, rewind, and unpack each episode for grown-ups only. Suzanne, I love the puns. It really makes things fun. Do you agree? This is a core goal of Teddy Talks, is making things fun.
Yes. I'm telling you what, we're having all the fun here. And finally, after literally years of you and I planning, we are here doing the Teddy Talks.
Yeah, so for those of you who just watched the episode, I'm here with Suzanne Tucker, who, fun fact, is not only a guest and founder of Generation Mindful, but also a co-producer and writer on the show and co-collaborator and an all-around amazing woman. So you're part of Team Teddy, not just as a guest. So I would think that maybe we can talk a little bit about our origin story, and then we're going to get into unpacking the episode. So Teddy Talks was born in 2020. A lot was going on at that time, if you remember. And as a school psychologist and you as a parent coach, we had parents and teachers coming to us saying, like, how do I explain these really hard things to kids? How do I explain global pandemics and masks and racial tensions and wars in Ukraine? And there's just an increase in kids' anxiety all around and parental anxiety too. So lots of big feelings out there. Am I right? So we wanted to start a show that modeled for parents how to talk about difficult topics with their little ones. So I remember telling you this idea, and I can remember it very vividly. Can you pick up our origin story from here when I floated the idea of Teddy Talks with you?
Absolutely. So, fun fact, first time we ever met each other, and we were vibing like soul sisters from minute one. And somewhere into our collaborative project, you bring up this idea, Teddy Talks. And you were like, yeah, I'm going to just like have it on my YouTube channel and maybe have a friend on. And my head was exploding because I saw this huge movement, Teddy Talks, big ideas for little ears, and the puns began. And I saw what is Generation Mindful, right? Where we make it fun to learn and where we connect the generations playfully. I saw just a merger of that vision with this accessible way to talk about hard things, right? To really pull in both the adult and the child in the learning and to make it fun and actually accessible to talk about anything and everything. And so literally by the end of this call, where there was another person on this call that was not you or I, and they got to come along this little journey with us where our heads were just literally exploding with potential and just fun. I think we were laughing and we were already generating like vision boards and lists of what we were seeing as possible. And this delightful third person was just kind of, I think, sitting back and going, wow, I'm literally watching a baby be born. And that was Teddy Talks. And then we had our second call. That is literally what happened.
We set a recurring calendar. We had just met. We set in a recurring calendar every Thursday, just Teddy Talks on repeat with the little bear emoji. So having fun together has been a big tenet of Teddy Talks. And I know that we talk about a lot of difficult topics. And this episode was no different. So I'm so glad we joined forces. And so let's unpack the episode for folks. So Suzanne, in this episode, it was all about mindfulness, right? And understanding emotions, which I know is one thing that is very important to you personally. So if you remember from this episode, the Teddy twins learned in our Teddy Talk really that all feelings are welcome. They're not good or bad. And we also learned a little something about sibling rivalry, which I know parents out there know all too well. So can you explain to me, we're going to start with the pause, and yes, pun intended. Why is this topic important to you?
This is why I started Generation Mindful. So as a little person, I was a rule follower. And I inherited the belief system, if you do good, you are good, and then you deserve love. Nobody explicitly taught me that. I just absorbed it by watching the adult behaviors around me. So what we teach at Generation Mindful is that we are not our feelings. We have feelings, and feelings are sacred and they are data, but they are not right and they are not wrong. And if every child on this planet knew that we feel angry, not I am angry, literally everything would change. Mental health, the mental health crisis we find ourselves in is largely caused by the fact that we have not invested as a society in early emotional literacy. We hold high reading and counting and academics. And yet academics are based on early social and emotional foundational skills. So at Gen M, literally the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of emotional intelligence are so simple. And they begin with, I feel, not I am. And so when we were looking at Teddy Talks in terms of myself being a guest, I was certain this needs to be central. And so, yes, the Teddies, our Teddy twins, they go through and they have a guest who has big feelings. And we really unpack that for children, that you are not your behavior. You have feelings, and those feelings drive behavior. So if we can stay curious as adults, we can get underneath even the most challenging moments with our kids.
I think that's one of the things that I had this sort of aha moment when I looked at Generation Mindful and we started collaborating, Suzanne, is that so many times as a school psychologist, I see teachers and I also as you as a parent coach using a concept of sort of time outs. And you talk a lot about time in. So for in this example, in this episode, Oliver is having, big feelings about transitioning from recess, super fun, to something he, perceives as less fun, which is going to clean up the classroom. So, in a traditional parenting model, one that probably you and I and a lot of listeners were raised on, it's if you act out, if you need to be sort of isolated and put into time out and learn your lesson and reflect on yourself. So tell me the difference between a time out and a time in.
So a timeout is you did bad, you feel bad, go away. And let me just pause really quick. I'm hearing a lawnmower in my backyard. And why this is relevant is we are here talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness is being present to the moment with joy and ease. And at Generation Mindful, the emotional literacy of mindfulness and also feelings is name it, feel it, heal it. So by putting words to, hey, Rebecca, I know I'm on your podcast here, and there's a lawnmower in my backyard, I'm actually modeling the tenets of what is it to be emotionally healthy and to be emotionally intelligent. Name it, feel it, heal it. So
how do you feel about that?
Yeah,
Suzanne?
how do I feel about that? A slight anxiety gripped my somewhat central gut area when I started to hear it. But I got to say, just by calling it out, I feel better. And truly, that's what we're teaching little people. So there's what is happening in the world. There's what we make it mean. And then that results what's going on in my insides. So a timeout says you did bad, you are bad. Literally go away until you can fit in the mold that is this society or this family or this classroom. And that as a little empath never sat right with me. And I was already a cooperative child, but I was immobilized by fear of not being accepted, not fitting in. So you better believe I marched that line. And I want people out there to understand when they think that this approach is working, they're looking at it wrong. They're looking at only the outcome of, is the child doing the behavior? And I can tell you, as an already cooperative child, it wasn't working inside of me because what it caused was fear, anxiety, a sense of if I have to do good and do right to be good and be loved. And I am not alone. Okay. This is very common in our generation. So a time in is a radical shift away. It takes the brain science of secure attachment and actual human development. And it says, okay, if I don't have a skill, how do I best teach that skill? Well, we do it by modeling. We do it playfully. And we sure don't do it by shaming and causing fear and humiliation to a child. So a time in says, we're having a breakdown. Let's work it out. Let's talk it out. Let's play it out. And that's what that's what we're doing here at Teddy Talks. So yeah, that is really the whole model, is breaking it down, taking a moment and making it a learning moment instead of a moment to punish and cause fear and shame.
Right. So like in the episode where, Grizzle didn't want to share his trains, a common parenting response might be like, that's not nice. You shouldn't, you should definitely share. So what would a time in or a more sort of progressive way to respond to that is? And in the Teddy Talks episode, you and I, scoured the language we're using to make sure that we're not using should and made me feel and anything that's, your feelings are good or bad. They're just feelings and they give us information. So, what is an alternative if there's a parent out there who their kids are bickering and then you should share?
Yes. Well, in the episode, the little one is like, "You're gonna steal my toys, and I'm never gonna get them back." So that's a really big feeling that a lot of children might be having. It's a very common feeling for a toddler who has a new baby entering the home to feel jealous. Can you imagine what a big feeling that little person is having when this whole new member of the family comes on and they're so cute and they're so loved? Those are very real feelings, and our kids are very new to language. So with Teddy Talks, we're pausing. And when that child does a confusing action like, no, I'm not sharing my trains, or I don't like baby, get baby out of here. Instead of punishing them, well, no, you can't say that. That is mean. That is bad. We're saying, stay curious. And we guide the adult in the language they need to mine that moment for the learning, for the love, for the connection, for the growth. So in those examples, just staying curious is really all that's needed. And then a child can stay curious, like, why didn't I want to share my train? And that is where self-awareness, empathy, compassion, and impulse control are born. And all of these feed a skill set that we all want for our children, which some could call mindfulness. Others, you look at it and you think resilience, the ability to be with hard things. These are the building blocks of those outcomes. And they don't come by overpowering and forcing. So what happens when I say to a child, you need to share, you should share. That's not nice. You're not being a good girl. You're not being a big girl. Share that train. What I've done is I've said, might makes right. Your instincts are wrong. They don't matter. Your feelings don't matter. I don't have time to pause to listen to what's going on inside of you. I just want this external end outcome, and I'm going to steamroll over you to get that end. And that's how we create bullies. We teach children might makes right, and power is control, and you want to be the strong one and in charge. And so you can see the difference. One cultivates the building blocks of social emotional intelligence. The other one is built on power and control.
Yeah, and so if you listen to the Teddy Talks episode, what Rebecca does in the episode is validates Grizzle's feelings. And then that's the alternative. So if you're listening out there, like, what great, how do I do that? The language in Teddy Talks is a model for parents out there. So saying it makes sense that you would be worried about sharing your trains. So you validated it, and then you can work from there. So let's rewind now in this segment. A lot of parents out there possibly were raised in a I'll give you something to cry about generation, or, kind of a stuff your emotions down kind of energy. And I, talk a lot about conscious parenting, and it's not about blaming past generations. It's about forgiving past generations. And then when we know better, we do better. And so now it's about looking forward to how can we validate our kids' feelings and be able to really make that shift from, time outs and punishment to time ins, which is validating and helping kids work through these big feelings. So let's rewind. Just a minute, a time machine. Congratulations. What advice do you wish your younger self knew about this topic?
Mm-hmm. What knowledge do I wish I had as a little person? I believe it is that I am love all the time. So I do think that every child and every adult, truly at our core, we just want to feel safe, seen, and a sense of belonging. And I have done the inner child work. And I can tell you, when the first time I sat down with my little Suzanne, I literally had a moment where I could see myself sitting on my childhood steps. I was about age 5. And when big Suzanne, was sitting next to little Suzanne, I turned to myself and I literally just said, I see you. And I remember this moment of this, it's literally a therapy that we can each do for and with ourselves, is to repair, to rewind, as we are saying, pause, rewind, go back. And it is where healing lives. We don't need to get it right as parents 100% of the time. That is not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about perfect parenting. We're talking about a seeking to be present. And when I can go back and be with my little self and say, I see you, it is everything. It is so healing. And so really, I think that is what I would wish for my little self, was just that I see you. And that really was everything for me in terms of being an adult and stepping into my own personal power, was that self-love and that compassion, and really just being curious about, who am I? What are my gifts? What are my challenges? And for me, that is the road to letting go of perfectionism, which can really be immobilizing to us as parents. We are driven to raise our children differently, or quote, better than we were raised. And I can see that leading a lot of us into a dead road of guilt and judgment, because inevitably we fail, right? There's a day we yell, we are not regulated, and then we judge. So if we can work with forgiving our past generations, we'll show up and we'll be able to love and forgive ourselves.
Yeah, that's amazing wisdom, and I think there's so much more to unpack. In the spirit of, wrapping up our Teddy Talk after hours, let's just talk a little bit about this idea of adult and reparenting. So at Teddy Talks, our tagline is big ideas for little ears. But we also have a lot of adult listeners too. We have a lot of big ear listeners out there. What do you think is most important? What's one thing that you want these big ear listeners to know about mindfulness and emotions?
Thank you. The really biggest topic we have at Gen M around mindfulness goes back to just the definition. I think we all think mindfulness is for somebody else. It's like, I am not good at that, so I'm just not that kind of person. We all picture somebody sitting crisscross on top of a quiet mountain somewhere, being mindful. And we all have a very different reality happening inside our heads. We have the inner critic, we've got a lot of noise. Truly, what I want everyone to redefine mindfulness as is being present to the moment with joy and ease. So that can look like, it can be a very messy moment. Okay. It's not a perfect, quiet, still moment. It's life. And so what we're talking about is showing up with what is, in a way that with the non-judgment, with the joy and the ease. So one of my favorite quotes is Glennon Doyle: life is like a dropped pie most of the time. So grab a fork, sit down, and have a bite. That's how I look at mindfulness. It's the presence of mind to say, whoop, there it is. The pie's on the ground. I'm going to go get me some. I'm going to get out that fork and take a bite. So I think if we put the joy and the ease at the forefront of what is mindfulness, we'll find that it's going to be a lot more accessible for us in everyday family life.
I love that. So we're going to end with a very big bonus question. So for those of you who don't know, Grizzlette is indeed my childhood bear. She has lost her nose, but she's still very dear to me. So Teddy Talks is based on a real bear, and I cherish her. And what I like to ask you is, do you remember having a Grizzlette or a favorite item from childhood, like a childhood bear or a lovey? Tell us a story.
I do. And, when we first came up with Teddy Talks, the idea that there was a real little you who was already like a little mini psychologist who would set up her bears and do school lessons and teach them, that for me was everything. And taking that real life you and your real life bear into this setting is everything. And for me, I had a blankie. And I slept with my blankie. It was my attachment. I can smell it today. That thing was probably never washed. I can literally say it was the best smell to me, my blankie. And what happened though, this is a funny kind of turn of events. At age 6, here I am going into a new school, and I'm an empath and didn't know it, living in a very not feeling world. Guess what happened to little Suzanne? She started having tummy aches at age 6. And ironically, the big people in my world weren't educated enough to think, and there was so much love in my world, honestly. I was just wrapped in it. And even still, I was confused. I had all these big feelings that weren't being talked about. And the adults in my world, they gave me allergy tests. They literally took away my pillow. And guess what else? My blankie.
No. A
Yes,
blankie.
because they thought, oh no, it's an allergy thing. And without even, guess what? Without talking to little Suzanne, it was just like, we love her. This is what's best. So bye-bye blankie, bye-bye pillow. So honestly, all of these experiences are foundational to why I am so passionate about Teddy Talks, because guys, Teddy Talks is for our children, but it's actually for us too. We as adults, we deserve tools and support. And our children deserve adults who are being supported and guided in guiding the children in learning social emotional skills through relationships. So that what happened to me could be corrected so easily if that adult had the language to get curious about the big feelings that little Suzanne was having. Where are they feeling? What do they feel like? And just staying curious and getting underneath it. That's really what Teddy Talks is about. Big ideas for little ears, talk it out and play it out.
Thank you so much for being on this episode and for being a part of Teddy Talks and the movement behind Teddy Talks. So we will see you all on the next episode of Teddy Talks. We look forward to it. And we hope that you have fun too. Even though these are heavy topics, we always like to do a little wink to the parents too, so that you can really enjoy co-listening with your little one in Teddy Talks. So thank you all so much. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Teddy Talks, Teddy Talks, Teddy Talks, Teddy Talks.